Do you know what it feels like when an entire village holds its breath? I do. Winter morning in Heidenstadt looked peaceful enough. Snow falling like it had nowhere better to be. But something was wrong. Dead wrong. You could feel it in the air, thick as the frost on those old timber beams. Heinrich Gunter, simple dairy farmer. Good man, they said. Kept to himself. But that morning, his name was on everyone's lips. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to fear. And that forest behind them, it wasn't just trees anymore. It was watching. I learned later he was curious, determined, the kind of stubborn that gets you into trouble. He walked toward those woods like he had answers waiting. But the forest, it had questions of its own, and they don't ask nicely. From above, you could see it all. The village, small, fragile, and the woods, ancient, endless, wrapping around Heidenstadt like fingers closing into a fist. Heinrich disappeared into that darkness, and the village, it just waited. Days passed. You know how time moves differently when you're afraid? Slower, heavier. Even the children felt it, stopping their games to stare at those trees. The Waldgeist, they whispered. Forest spirit, ancient, hungry. They organized a search party, good people doing what good people do. But I've seen that look before. Determination mixed with dread. Their lanterns carved holes in the darkness, but the darkness, it was so much bigger. Then they found them. Footprints leading deeper. You'd think that's hope, right? A trail to follow? But those prints, they told a different story, one that made grown men exchange glances they'd regret remembering. And then the altar, covered in snow, ancient runes peeking through like secrets that should have stayed buried. They didn't know what it meant, not yet, but their hands gripped those lanterns tighter. Instinct knows before the mind does. The old man knew. You could see it in his eyes, that horrible recognition. Offerings to the Waldgeist, he said. Sacrifices. Folklore was bleeding into reality, and nobody was ready for what that meant. That's when she appeared. Agatha Krauss. Scholar, outsider, the kind of person who asks questions nobody wants to answer. Me? I was intrigued. She had that look. Someone who'd seen darkness before and walked toward it anyway. She watched, studied, while everyone else ran from the truth. Agatha, she chased it. I remember thinking that's either bravery or madness. In Heidenstadt, there wasn't much difference. Around that fire, stories poured out like confessions. Fear makes people talk. She listened to every word, collecting their nightmares like specimens. And with each story, the pattern became clearer. Heidenstadt's past wasn't buried. It was waiting. She convinced them to go back, into the storm, into the darkness. Takes a special kind of crazy to lead people toward their fears. But they followed. Maybe they trusted her. Maybe they just needed someone who wasn't afraid to move forward. The stone circle. Agatha's lantern caught it first. Formations older than memory, covered in secrets the earth tried to hide. You could feel the shift in the air. Curiosity turning to alarm. Understanding turning to horror. Bones. Animal bones, they hoped. Evidence of sacrifices that were supposed to be legend. Agatha knelt there. Scientists and believer collided in real time. Behind her, the villagers understood. They'd been feeding something for generations. Then, crash. Everything froze. Time, breath, thought. Something moved between those trees. Not wind, not animal, something else. And every instinct screamed the same word, run. But Agatha, she wanted to stay, needed to know. I understood that hunger, for truth, for answers, even when the price might be everything. Her face said it all, terror and determination dancing together. Dawn brought no comfort, just 3 words in the mud. He has returned. Agatha's face went white. Past and present weren't separate anymore. They were colliding, and Heidenstadt was ground zero. The village gathered, argued, voices low but urgent. Should they run? Should they fight? Heinrich's name hung in the air like smoke, and every option felt like choosing between bad and worse. They chose tradition, ancient words in an ancient tongue, torches against darkness, hope against horror. They called for Heinrich's spirit, believing folklore might save what folklore had endangered. Desperation makes believers of us all. Agatha stood apart, scholar watching superstition, rationalist facing the irrational. Her pen trembled over that notebook. Sometimes knowledge isn't power, it's burden, and she was carrying more than anyone knew. Then the howl. Not wolf, not wind, something ancient and angry. Torches flickered like dying heartbeats. Fear became tangible. You could see it spreading through the crowd like contagion. This wasn't summoning Heinrich. This was awakening something else. And there it was, rising from the forest like it had been sleeping just beneath the surface, cloaked in darkness and mist. The Waldgeist? Heinrich? Something worse? Their lanterns couldn't hold it back. Light was losing. I watched Agatha's face, fear wrestling with determination, every instinct screaming run, but her feet planted firm. That's the moment when you decide who you are, run or stand. She chose the harder path. The others ran. Can't blame them. Survival isn't cowardice, it's honest. They scattered like leaves in a storm, shadows chasing their heels. Courage has limits. They'd found theirs. Agatha stayed, alone in that clearing, facing what everyone else fled. I've wondered what she saw in that moment. Truth? Death? Both? The fog swirled around her like the forest was breathing. The shadows took her, not violently, worse, gently, like she belonged there. She saw them, the lost souls, Heinrich, others, all bound to the darkness, and understanding hit her. This was never about saving anyone, it was about joining them. After, silence. The woods stood there, patient as ever. The altar, the bones, the traces of their ritual, all still. But Heinrich, Agatha, the others, gone, swallowed by legend made real. Her home stood empty, papers everywhere, frantic notes about Heidenstadt's secrets. Days turned to nights, nights to madness. She'd been consumed by the very mysteries she sought to understand. The hunter became the hunted. Her last writings trembled on the page. Pain, confusion, the weight of knowing too much and understanding too little. Some truths don't set you free, they trap you. Time passed. Heidenstadt became a ghost town. Heavy snow buried the streets like the village was being erased. The few who remained, though, they stayed inside, waiting for what they couldn't say. They watched from windows, prisoners of their own fear. You could see it in their eyes, madness creeping in. The whispers never stopped. Legends don't die, they just wait for the next believer. Spring came, though. Life's funny like that. Keeps going whether you're ready or not. Flowers pushed through snow. The villagers, they pushed through fear. But those woods, still standing, still watching. They gathered again, shared stories of the lost, Heinrich, Agatha, others whose names faded but whose absence screamed. Memory binds us, to hope, to loss, to each other, even in darkness, especially in darkness. I like to think Agatha's spirit was there, her determination, her refusal to let fear write the ending. She'd shown them something important, that understanding the darkness doesn't mean surrendering to it. Belief and disbelief, two sides fighting for dominance. You could see it in their faces, wanting to hope, afraid to hope. That's the edge humans walk every day. Heidenstadt just made it visible. They created their own ritual, not of fear this time, of defiance, holding hands, facing those woods, choosing hope over horror. Brave? Absolutely. Foolish? Maybe. But sometimes they're the same thing. As they chanted, something shifted. Light against shadow, unity against fear. You could feel it, the balance tipping. Not victory, but resistance. And sometimes that's enough. Then, there, a figure in the distance. The woods pulsed, heart stopped. Was it over? Was it beginning again? That's the thing about darkness. It's patient, and it always comes back. But they didn't run this time. They're light, small, fragile, held against the darkness, and in that moment they proved something. Fear doesn't have to win, not if you stand together. Dawn brought no comfort, just possibility. They stood there, exhausted, terrified, alive, aware of their power and their place. The battle wasn't over, but they'd learned to fight. Agatha's legacy wasn't answers, it was courage. The courage to look darkness in the eye and not blink, to accept that legend and reality dance together, to choose hope anyway. Seasons changed, life returned. Fear still lived in the edges, but it didn't rule anymore. They'd learned the hardest lesson. You can't banish darkness. You can only refuse to let it define you. From above, you could see the whole story. Village and woods, separate but connected. Light and shadow, balanced but never settled. Heidenstadt survived, not by forgetting, by remembering and moving forward anyway. If Agatha could write her ending, I think she'd say this: horror isn't the monster in the woods. It's forgetting we can face it. Resilience isn't fearlessness. It's choosing courage anyway. They told their stories now, not to scare, but to remember. Horror deepened their bonds instead of breaking them. That's transformation, turning fear into fellowship, darkness into strength. Night fell without terror. The forest whispered, but differently now, not threatening, but reminding. They'd learned to listen without letting fear translate. Heidenstadt thrived, not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to let it be the only story. Light and shadow, both real, both present. They'd learned to live with the balance. That's not just survival, that's victory. As I look back on Heidenstadt, I see it clearly now. The village, the woods, light and shadow dancing their eternal dance. The past whispers, but the future? The future shouts. And sometimes, just sometimes, hope is louder than fear. That's the story I choose to remember. That's the story worth telling.